Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of your Brains Coach podcast. My name is Angela Sharina. I'm your host, I'm your Brains Coach, and just someone with a lot of passion, curiosity, and thirst for knowledge. I'm here to share with you all the brain tools that you can use to feel, look, and do your absolute best. Guys, today is Monday. It's the second week of the year. And on our usual motivational Monday vibe, and it's still beginning of the year, and we all have a lot of inspiring goals and amazing visions that we'd like to bring into life this year. And on this Monday, second week of the year, I'd like to share with you, I'm very excited to share with you this podcast episode that I'm not doing alone. We have a guest, Erik Seve, who I learned about after reading his recent book / collaboration with a lot of other authors and researchers of peak performance. So his book, Mindset Tools for Entrepreneurs, Peak Performance Series. And then I learned more about Erik, and I got so fascinated, and I thought that I absolutely needed to have Erik on your Brains Coach podcast. So Erik Seve, speaker, author, adventurer, educator, entrepreneur. His motto or main focus, life is good, extraordinary is possible. Erik is also an author of a best-selling book, Ordinary to Extraordinary, Stories of Exotic Places and Remarkable People, How Belonging in Person and Purpose Can Transform Your Life. Erik started his journey in a suburb of Tacoma, Washington. Erik at first didn't receive a lot of support from school counselors or others to get his education, and he wasn't doing that well. But then he transformed himself, and he got very thirsty for knowledge, and he took his experience of setbacks and rejection, and then he turned it into excellence and success. Erik received his master's degree in anthropology and used anthropology in business, helping a company grow from 7 millions to over 100 millions in 10 years, doing international business development. Erik is passionate about teaching and learning languages. He taught English for 10 years in Japan, France, Thailand, University of Virginia, UCLA. Erik has traveled to over 80 countries. He has ridden a motorcycle on 6 continents. Erik climbs mountains, having summited the highest peak of 13 countries and 11 states. Different experiences ranging from discussing philosophy at cafes in Paris to having a machine gun stuck in his mouth in Nigeria. All these experiences have forged a unique perspective that Erik uses to work through both the big life questions and small everyday decisions. Erik is a person who refused to let others tell him what he could and could not do. He continually worked towards his goals even when others said they were unreasonable. Erik's travels and intersections with people from around the world were a study of people, love, struggle, and ways of thinking that can be used to tackle problems in school, business, and life. His current ambitions are sharing the lessons he's learned through public speaking, his language school, and climbing mountains, which he says makes everyday challenges seem a lot easier. On today's podcast, Erik will share with you how he was not doing well at school and ended up reading 2 books per day. Erik will share with you his secrets to speed reading. And we know, all of us know, that leaders are readers. An average executive reads 52 books per year. Erik will share with you his story of how his entrepreneurship journey started with gardening. Why Erik uses self-videotaping to keep himself focused, how exactly he does it, and what it does for his business and life. Erik will share with you his personal recipe and lessons, how to keep passion alive when, as entrepreneur, you go on a journey and things don't go your way, or you have to do a lot of things that you aren't excited about, like how to keep your passion going. 3 things to focus on to keep your business growing and your soul glowing. How to make money goals bring you joy versus stress and tension. What Erik does to bounce back when he falls behind with progress and gets stuck. And what part of Erik's morning routine contributes to getting unstuck, getting out of the rut. Then Erik will share with you all his favorite productivity tools, from his favorite visualization technique to cursing, and as a tool to manage negative self-talk and imposter syndrome. And a lot more. Guys, this is a very fascinating, interesting, excited, but also very practical episode of Your Brains Coach podcast. So please enjoy, tune in, stay tuned, and take notes. Learn from this podcast episode, because there are a lot of things that you can apply to your life and business that will accelerate your journey forward, and also will improve the quality of your life, your well-being, joy of living this extraordinary life experience. And then after, don't forget to reach out to Erik, and he will tell you exactly why on this podcast. So stay tuned and enjoy this podcast episode and start living your extraordinary life experience. Erik, welcome to the show. Welcome to Your Brains Coach podcast. So happy to have you here today.
Me too. I'm excited to be here. I've seen some of the things you've done. I've heard your podcast, and I'm happy to be on it now.
Yeah, thank you so much for dedicating some time to exploring my content as well. Erik, right now I'm looking at the wall of books behind you. And it reminds me of this, the fact of your story that you've done so many things and been to so many countries, 89, and had so many experiences that before our podcast recording, I'm like, where do you even start, right? And because our podcast is for entrepreneurs, for doers, for dreamers, and it's dedicated to performance, I think it's a great way to start your story. Maybe it was like where your journey began, how your entrepreneurial journey began, and let's see where we go from there.
Okay, good. So I'll start with the launch of, you mentioned the books. So I was a really bad student growing up. I flunked the 2nd grade. I was a C- student, and I didn't not care or try in school. It just didn't come easily. My parents, I was the 3rd kid, and they already put their energy into the first 2 who, went on to do great things. And so I just kind of went through school and, not really doing great. And then in my junior year in high school, I decided I want to become a college professor. And I thought, college professors don't get C-. So I started, all of a sudden, something clicked. Sure, I studied a little more. I applied myself a little bit more, but I went from a C- average to straight A's from then on. And most of it was my mindset. That was the biggest shift, not the extra work. And so the reason I love books so much is I missed so much time reading. All my friends were reading small books when they were young. They were reading books in their AP English classes, and I wasn't at all. So when I made that switch, I wanted to make up for lost time. I was reading up to 2 books a day. I was reading on average 7 books a week at that period then, and that lasted for years. So the books go all the way around the room as well, not just behind me. And so I love what books give us, because there's just so much out there from so many different perspectives that now I'm in love with books. It's, one of my things. I make notes in them. I write down when I finally finished it in the leaf, and any books that I think I'm going to refer to again, I have really accessible to me. So books have been a really neat part of my education as an entrepreneur, as other things as well. When I get into anything, it's probably an average of 15 books are going to be read within the next 2-3 weeks, because I just dive into the topic. And it's so wonderful we have that as a resource.
Yeah. And maybe do you have a couple of tips for our listeners who are also learners? How do you read faster? Do you have any special, simple techniques so people could apply?
Yes, absolutely. So the funny thing is, I found that the faster I read, the more I retained. And I couldn't figure this out. And then somebody explained to me that when I'm really reading fast, I'm focused on that. When I'm just reading, enjoying, which I like to do sometimes, when I'm just reading and enjoying, my mind starts to wander a little bit. I might think about, going to the park later. I might think about something I did the day before. But when I'm reading really fast, I'm hyper focused on what I'm reading. And so I actually retain more. When I'm reading pretty fast, I usually just do the 2 beats method, where I beat twice on each line. And your eyes, the brain, our eyes are getting it all. Our brain is getting it all. It's just a matter of what gets into us. And when we beat those 2 beats, for me, on each line, just going through very, very quickly, my brain fills in all those extra words that I'm not absolutely focusing on in order.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to try this. Yeah. I love reading books. But I think I'm on average, an average reader. So I probably average out 2 books per week.
That's great.
Yeah, but I want to read more, because it just, I share your passion for reading. It's like getting someone's 10-year or 20-year of someone's experience in, I don't know, a couple of days, right?
Yeah, right.
It's amazing.
And I don't know exactly where the source comes from this, but I've heard it many, many times that the average top CEOs read 52 books about a week. About now, it's a little, because I'm focused on still at least a book weeks, and people are saying, how can these high performers have time to actually read a book a week? And one of the things is they realize the value, me too, and you obviously with 2 books a week, realize the value that we're getting, and it just keeps our ideas so much more fresh by getting these different perspectives as we're going through our routines in entrepreneurship and business.
So reading, one of your biggest passions, but then, and you also wrote a book. So obviously writing became your passion at some point, right? Ordinary to extraordinary, stories of exotic places and forgot the word, extraordinary.
Amazing people.
Or something. Amazing people. Yeah, how a belonging person can transform your life. So, and you co-authored so many books. I actually just finished one of those books, Peak Performance for Entrepreneurs.
Great.
Yeah. So, but then also you're a great entrepreneur, right? Your entrepreneurial journey started when you were 5 years old. So share with our listeners a little bit of that also, that story, like how you started then and then grew, several companies to an incredible level.
So yeah, the first entrepreneurial idea, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Of course, I was young, I think 5-7 years old, around there. And my next door neighbor, I used to follow him when he'd mow his lawn. He was older. He was probably 75. Mr. Wesley was his name. And I'd follow him as he mowed his lawn. I just loved seeing him working in his yard every single day. He had a massive garden. And so one day he asked if he wanted to rototill a small patch in our field. And I said, so I could create a garden. And I said, absolutely. He did. And we planted onions and carrots were the main thing, but a few other things. And then I just had this great idea as these carrots and onions were growing, I'm going to sell them on the side of the road. And I did it, 5 or 7 years old. I got my onions was the first thing, washed them off meticulously. I took great care in these onions, went to the side of the road and sold them. And it's kind of funny that one of my neighbors bought the whole bucket in one fell swoop. And I thought I was going to be there all day selling one onion at a time for 5 cents each. In the end, he gives me $2 for the whole bucket. And for me, that was like a bunch of money. So I was super excited about that. Yeah. And then that I think excitement about the possibility of what I'm going to do with the money, what I'm, that actually continued. I remember that to this day, that really youthful excitement I had. And when I have, when I'm creating a business, now I have that same excitement. My last company, I kind of documented, I took like a 30-second video of myself every single day for, I think, the first probably 6 or 8 months. And then I started doing it a little bit less, but I kept documenting it. And that also helped me to think of, okay, analyze my day every single day as I shot this little self, just held up my phone, turned the screen around and clicked it and talked for 30 seconds. And I wanted to make sure I was for sure under a minute for everyone. And it made me reduce every action of the day onto that 30-second or a minute clip. And it helped me really keep focused on what my priorities for the company were going to be. And I would talk about what my goals were. And then maybe 2 months later, when I reached a goal, I'd say, okay, I set this goal 2 months ago and I've reached it today. And some of it was just like, all right, I applied for my LLC. Okay. I got my tax ID today. So it was just mundane things, but it helped me really keep on track and keep focused. And it kept that fun going as well.
Mm-hmm. And I remember reading in one of your books about, this excitement, this fun, that passion that every entrepreneur has to keep alive in order to keep going, right? And somewhere there was a question like, but how do you keep this passion, this excitement going when things get hard or things don't go your way, right? Or you have to work on one thing or a lot of mundane things day after day after day. So what's your recipe? What's your reply?
Okay, I'm going to answer in two parts, and I'll start with the part where that passion. Even though I don't have a plan to create a new company coming up, I do have, for example, another idea that I want to turn into a massive project. And that gets me super excited. I immediately start talking about it with other people, getting feedback and and that helps me too. It helps me, my thought process. I think about it while I'm going to sleep. I think about it when I'm waking up. And then I figure out if I do it or not. So right now I have a project I'm thinking about, but it would I would have to hire a bunch of people and manage a bunch of people. And I'm not sure if I'm ready for that right at this moment. But that excitement of what the project will be will definitely keeps it going. And then also for just keeping that passion, I definitely think it's really important for us to remember, why, Simon Sinek's start with why whole thing, that the why we're doing things really, really helps me. And sometimes my wife will say to me, Erik, you've been talking about money. Every time you start talking about your business, one of the first things you're talking about is money. And she goes, and I'm complaining about something. And she goes, you got to remember what your main goal is. And my main goal is to help other people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. And then as soon as I remember my main goal, which is helping other people, all of a sudden the money things fall into place just like they should. And so it helps me be excited by remembering what the main goal is. For me, it's, helping other people. And when I say that, there are mainly three things. There's through my books and co-authored books, projects that I've created, through public speaking, and then also through some of the courses and coaching I do for people. And so it's really exciting when I keep focused on that part, not when I focus on, okay, last October I did this. Why am I not there this October? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember also reading somewhere that, you got to have this, purpose alive. You got to understand how you help other people with your purpose, with what you do. And then, if money, goes well, then it all kind of feeds into, each other in this loop, and you have a great business, right? If you have those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think money is a great thing. I was working with somebody, he invited me to speak in India in early October. And he had this model that I really liked. And I said, I want to copy your model. And he's like, you know what, if you do, good for you, because my goal is to help people get rich and to make sure people are kind. He goes, so if you're copying my model, there are more people, and he works with a lot of just like university students just trying to make it. Like in India, the great education for, if you want an engineer, go to India. If you want a doctor, go to, all these the schools are great. However, the getting a job afterwards, because there's so many great students and such a huge population that it's not super easy. So he helps people, students mainly. And the whole idea is helping them become rich and helping them be kind to others, because that's just going to keep folding in on myself.
Yeah. Kindness to others, and setting your business so it's also profitable. Yeah, it's definitely important. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs like myself, when we miss one of the parts, being kind to others, but then providing value, or of also making sure that money flow like in a sufficient way, right? Enough from providing the business and yourself, your family, and then having your purpose. Like once you have this, it's going to be great. And if you don't have something, like you have to figure out how to bring it to make the whole thing work, make it complete. Okay?
Yeah, right. And also I want to be clear that I think it's good. Like I said, sometimes when I was focusing on money and my wife reminded me to get back onto my main purpose. However, that passion we were talking about, when I'm thinking about the dividends that are going to come from an activity, when I'm thinking about the money that's going to come back, that is exciting to me. And I think it should be, because that's one of the ways that helps us wake up and want to do more and want to work, because we do think about not only the money, but what we're going to be able to do with that, whether it be buy more books or go for a trip or whatever it is. And so that is an important ingredient, I think, for a successful entrepreneur. Is it's not greedy to want money to come your way.
Yeah. And I think you pointed out an important thing is that it's not the amount of money, it's what you do with that money, right? That we should focus on to make money exciting for us. Like I think very similar to you and a lot of entrepreneurs actually that I know of or worked with, is we are not so much driven by money most of the time,
right? But
money is important. And when we focus on why, this money is important or what we can do with that, that can really sparkle our passion and our enthusiasm and our productivity, right? So whenever I feel a little bit tensed and not really motivated, I'm like, but what it's going to mean for you or for life of others, for people you can help, right? For your family, etc. So, and that sparkles back the passion and enthusiasm for money.
Absolutely. And this kind of reminded me of something that I thought of when you were talking earlier about keeping passions, keeping on track. It wasn't long ago that I was already pretty kind of behind. We did a massive construction project. We just built my library not so long ago, actually. And so I kind of fell behind a little bit. Then I got invited to speak in India for 2 weeks and I was already behind, but it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I go to India, and that 2 weeks now threw me like a month behind. So I was struggling to catch up, and I was just really working. And about a month after India, and I still wasn't caught up, I started to feel a burnout, which I rarely get to. But then, rather than working harder and getting caught up, I began procrastinating. I was doing tasks that were not important tasks on my to-do list, rather than doing the super important tasks. So then a week of doing that goes by, and then I'm almost feeling underwater, trying, how am I going to catch up now? And so I drove to the mountains. I was driving to the mountains to meet some men up in Big Bear near LA. And I don't listen to music when I drive alone. I'm only thinking about my business or listening to a podcast or some sort of book on audio. So I was only thinking about the business. And my one goal for this 1.5-hour drive or 2-hour drive was, how do I get out of this funk I'm in with not being super productive? And I thought of all of the things I normally do, and I realized that I wasn't doing my morning meditation routine. I do a 15-minute guided meditation every morning, and I had this great, kind of morning routine I was doing. But in my busyness, I decided that 15 minutes wasn't important, and it was an unconscious thing. I was just doing things. And so I go, okay, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that. Just start doing that every single morning. And it was literally, Angela, like a light switch went on that I was right back to the Erik Seve I normally am, which is pretty productive and getting things done without procrastination. That was 2 weeks ago. And in 2 weeks, I feel pretty much caught up. I've still got a lot of things that I need to get done, especially before Christmas, but I feel pretty much caught up just by pausing and asking myself, why am I not as productive as I normally am? And I found the answer by listening to myself. Listening to my brain.
Yeah. And, it reminds me of the fact that usually we all have the best answers for why certain things work for us or don't work, and what's the best solution in this situation to move forward, right? But as you mentioned, we need to pause, take time, and allow our brain to think instead of just, running through to-do lists and errands and all the things that we got to do. And in my own, life and while working with other entrepreneurs, there is this thing that we believe that the more we do, the better it is. There is no time for meditation or downtime or, I don't know, playful stuff that allows our brain, to connect different parts and ideas. But the more we actually, again, from my experience, we dedicate time to, stopping and pausing and allow our brain to do the thinking uninterrupted and not stressed, not trashed, the better, ideas, solutions we come up with. And the progress comes in a more effective way, right? Instead of just pushing and not really understanding how it's all gonna, create the result that we want to create. It's such a great reminder, and I just want to remind our listeners that it's not a waste of time to stop and pause and think. And actually going to deliver better decisions that will help you to achieve the result faster and better.
Yeah, absolutely. I do at the start of the year, I make different goals. I make like a 2-page resolution list. And exercise is always on there. And it's not just because I think it's good for our hearts, it's good for our brains, it's good for our bodies, but it's that time. It gives me that time too. So right now, my thing is in January, I'm climbing another mountain in June. So I'm going to start training in January 1. But for now, it's just, and so it's miles a day, and I'm 90 now. If I look, I know exactly how many days it is. And so what I do is I get to that point where after, 35 days or so that I don't want to break the streak. So I make sure I keep it up. And that gives me the 30 to 40 minutes to totally every single day. And sometimes I'll walk with my dog. Sometimes I'll walk with my kids. But sometimes I'll walk alone. But it gives me that time every day to just be outside and allow my brain to, go where it wants to. And many of my best thoughts are when I'm walking alone, for me, especially at night. And so it's such an important aspect of an entrepreneur's life, I think, is some sort of exercise, also including that brain downtime.
Yeah. Brain downtime. I think it's so important. It's like with exercise, you mentioned, in order to get results in your training, you need to have downtime. Otherwise, you just overtrain and lose all of your results that you put your time and energy in.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you while you were talking and mentioning things like I wasn't feeling productive, right, before I got back to my meditation, etc. What for you as a very productive, I believe, entrepreneur and educator, what for you productive means? Like, what's the definition? And when you say I don't feel productive, what does it mean? Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's also important to understand through perspective of other people. Am I really productive, or am I just in my head?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. And when in that context I was talking about, I was mainly thinking about, for example, I'm helping a few people get their books produced. And so I need to edit. I'm also doing some editing. And so some of it is just completing work-related tasks, like this book needs a final proofread. Okay, how am I going to make sure that gets done? This person needs their ISBNs generated, that. And so some of it is just tasks like that. But for me, generally productive is at the end of the day, when I look back and I think, what value did I provide either to myself and my own business, or more importantly, to other people that I work with or even don't work with? Because I try and provide value to acquaintances in business all the time, whether we're officially doing a joint venture or not. And so that for me is productive. If I've completed the mundane, quote, tasks that need to be done to keep my business flowing, if I've also had kept up the relationships in both business and private life, and provided value in both the private life and my business life, which are blended. I like there's a quote by Richard Branson that I don't think of work as work and play as play. They're both living. And that's kind of how I live my life. I like to enjoy the people I work with as and they become friends as well. If I had an on-off switch between work and life, it would be a really hard switch because it would flip on and off so often.
Yeah, this idea of work-life balance or work, play distinction or work and rest, it's like, it's all life. We just dedicate, time and energy and other resources to different parts of it. But very often our best ideas for business would come from our life when, we spend time with family or just playing, doing some activity. And very often our business is what gives us, I don't know, the zest, this energy to also enjoy our pastime, right? And makes our life meaningful and makes us happy, right? That's what work does when we choose it wisely. But that also back to productivity reminded me of this thing. What I also learned is that, yes, it's about the value that you add for sure. But also sometimes it's helpful for me to remind myself that not everything depends on me. Right? As long as I show up, as long as I take action, and if something doesn't work, I learn from that. That is a productive day. Right?
Absolutely.
For me, unproductive, I just wanted to mention, means like if I'm in that mode when I'm delaying action or procrastinating or spending on something that I know isn't meaningful, not productive.
And the hard part is when we fool ourselves that we are doing something productive. Like, for example, for me, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs who have gotten into this. First, I start reading books. I'll read Tim Ferriss, then I'll read David Schwartz, and then I'll read Napoleon Hill, and then I'm going to keep Dale Carnegie. And I just keep reading, and I'm so excited. But then it gets to a point where I'm reading to be productive because it's helpful for the business. But I've already read enough without applying any of these things I've learned. So there's a point when you got to stop and actually start applying them rather than just keep on gaining the knowledge. And also sometimes I'd stay busy with tasks. So for example, get minor bookkeeping things done that really don't need to be done then when I'm really kind of like avoiding, a sales call. So I'll spend 45 minutes doing some minor bookkeeping stuff when really all I need to be doing is doing that sales call that I'm avoiding. And so we fool ourselves by being productive by doing tasks that somebody else can do, or feeding ourselves knowledge so much that we're not taking time to take action. So those are two kind of traps that early entrepreneurs often get into. They're not horrible because they are, quote, productive, but they're not the most valuable thing you can do for your business.
Yeah, I so agree and can relate to that. For me, I go by feeling. Like now I know that when I'm engaged in those, not really productive things that I do just to do something, I start feeling like something feels off. It's like I'm dragging my feet a little bit, or my mind wants me to go somewhere else, but I'm like, no, I'm going to focus on this because maybe it's comfortable, right? Or maybe I want to avoid this task. Whereas if it's really productive, whether I'm reading a book that is really useful for my business right now, or when I'm doing certain call or working on my sales, I feel this like really energizing vibe, right? And motivated. And it just feels completely different. So that's how I differentiate between being truly productive or just productive, to put a check mark somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned the check mark. I also, when I took that time to reflect, I realized I wasn't making lists. And I'm a massive list taker. Here's my Monday's list. So the column on the left is my business list. My column on the right is my personal things that need to get done. And so I used to do this really faithfully. Every Monday morning, I'd spend the first many minutes making a list. And then after I see this massive, and it would be big things and small things. And then when I have this massive list, I would just put a star by the ones that are kind of most important. And then I would circle the one that scares me the most. And usually that's the one I have to do. And so, for example, on my list there, I start a few things, like I said, there's a few people I have to get back to that I'm working with them on their books. So these are tasks I had to get done. I'm kind of behind on. And then there's one, which is just kind of stupid, but I was getting some iStock photos and I accidentally clicked the yearly button for buying 25 photos a month rather than the monthly one, which is, 120 versus 150. So all of a sudden I noticed I'm getting billed $120 every month, and but I'm not even using these things. So all I have to do is pick up the phone and call them and solve this thing. But I hate doing things like that so much that it took me circling it on my sheet to finally pick up the phone. So I've spent $240 wasted pretty much because I didn't do one small task I didn't want to do, which is pick up, call, and fix a solution with somebody on the phone. And so once I get my list down and I circle it, then I can't ignore it.
Yeah, it's such a great tool for, I guess, figuring out your priorities and also for time management, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, I think, I myself also from time to time struggle with time management and, how I allocate different resources. So just, taking lists and figuring out what's like the most impactful things, the most important things. Great tool for, to stay more productive and also to get more results. We started talking about productivity, and of course, it is a part of performance. Being a peak performance, high performance person. I wanted to ask you about your favorite tools from different areas, if you don't mind. We kind of, started talking about time management and maybe attention management. What about other areas like, let's say? Well, let's start with mind management. Like, what do you do when it comes to managing your self-talk, your mental health, to stay in that zone of peak performance, of being productive, getting results, creating value? What are some of your favorite ones?
Yeah, so I definitely, and I got this originally from Tim Ferriss, and then I followed the rabbit hole and read a few of the books like David Schwartz, and the ebook Revisited is another one I like by Gerber. And so some of these books that have looked at what do top performers, thought leaders, elite professional athletes, what do they have in common? And there are a few things, and one is visualization, prayer, and meditation, or a combination of those two. Some form of visualization, prayer, or meditation. And then also writing down goals was another one. And exercise was actually a key component. So one of the things I do to keep on that is I try and copy those things. So my morning routine is I'll do some visualization. Part of my meditation is visualizing my future and things like that. And that really, really, really helps a lot, is to just copy what these people have done.
Any specific type of visualization, or what specifically you focus on while visualizing things?
Yes. The main thing is visualizing my future, or for somebody else, it's their future. I do it 3 years ahead. Vishen Lakhiani, Mind Valley, he's got this 6-phase meditation. It's a guided meditation that I use. And 90 seconds of that is visualizing your perfect future 3 years into the future, and as if it's real. So visualizing yourself in present tense, visualizing if it's money coming in, doing that. If it's climbing a mountain, doing that. If it's starting another business, it's visualizing exactly what it is. So visualizing ourselves in present tense, and our brains already, it thinks it's already real. So it does everything to try and make that happen. And when I am going to do a speech, for example, I will multiple times, I used to do boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and same thing before my fights, because it's scary to walk into a ring and there's a guy trying to hurt me as bad as he can, right? It's scary. But I would visualize that fight, the whole fight from start to finish 10 times maybe before the fight. So by the time I get into the ring, I'm still nervous, but my brain has been there 10 times. My brain thinks it has been there 10 times already. So it's not a panic, fight, or flight mode. I get positive chemicals from adrenaline and all these things that positive stress gives us, but I'm not paralyzed by that at all. I'm not overly fatigued. So when I do public speaking, I'll visualize the speech from start to finish. And that totally helps when I get into that situation. And when I have conversations, if I even have coffee with a co-author, for example, that I have not met. So I say I've co-authored a book with somebody. We've not met, book's out. We decide they're in LA for some reason. We go meet for coffee. I don't want to waste that time. This person, the last one I can think of that this happened with is he's from the Netherlands. I'm probably not going to be in the same place in the same time with him for a while. So we met in this cafe in Beverly Hills, got together. And I was really intentional of, before we met, what do I want to talk to him about? Because I don't want to leave and then suddenly think, oh, I should have mentioned this. Why didn't I think of that? So I intentionally think about my conversations. I visualize my conversations with people.
Mhm.
Then when I have the conversations with them, I rarely miss the key points that I don't want to miss with them.
Yeah, it's such an important, I don't know, aspect of, I think, visualization that at least I don't often think about, is that it helps you, one, to be intentional and to create the experience, with other people that you want to create and get the outcome. But then the second one is to turn off the stress response. I think that's what's very valuable, especially again for experiences like speaking or maybe delivering a presentation or a pitch. Like a lot of us would have this, stress response. But if we go through that experience in our mind many, many times, for the brain will get used to that experience.
Right.
It's amazing.
And you mentioned also the negative self-talk. One of the things I like to say, I've experienced it, is if somebody isn't experiencing imposter syndrome from time to time, they're not pushing themselves hard enough. Because the first time I experienced it, excuse me, I was in an anthropology honors program at UCLA as a student and as an undergraduate honors program. And I looked at this table I was sitting around. It was the professor and 8 students, including myself. And I literally looked around and I thought, every one of these students is smarter and better than me. What am I doing here? Right. And luckily the professor, I think, recognized that, and he took me under his wing. And in the end, I won best undergraduate research at UCLA that year. But he helped me overcome this imposter syndrome that could have limited potential. That was a key point in my path in life that helped me go one direction instead of another direction. But it still comes up from time to time. Sometimes I'm on a Zoom with these other business people and I'm like, they are working so much harder than I am. What am I doing wrong? Right. And so so that's a level of imposter syndrome, I think, too. And then do you know what I do is I get rid of it quickly. Whenever I start to have that self-talk start to creep in, I actually cuss at it. I say, F you, I'm too good for you. I don't have time for this. So I literally cuss at my negative self-talk. F you, get out of here. I don't have time for this. And I move on. And it works almost every single time. I'm coaching a guy and he was struggling recently with some negative things in his life and negative self-talk, all self-sabotage. And and I told him this technique. The next time we met, he was smiling from ear to ear and he's like, I can't believe it. And all he did is started cussing at his self-talk and saying he doesn't have time for it, his negative self-talk.
Yeah, it's such a great technique. I'm also going to steal it because, that negative self-talk, I think it comes up for every single person, like especially entrepreneurs. You're always, trying something new, something you're not good at, and something that probably a lot of people are better than you at. And it just comes up and can really stop us, tracks and, delivering value and making progress. So, I'm going to do that. And, it also sounds fun. And also I read somewhere, I think that cursing actually increases like your energy or something else positive about performance, or helps you to deal with pain, something like that.
Yeah, with pain. So like my brother had lung cancer and he used this technique of cursing at basically you yell at your cells. You say, good cells, attack the bad cells, F you, get out of here. My body's too strong for you. Right. And as he was doing that, he read that using the language actually produces I don't know if it that's hormones, releases different hormones, but that is more effective. And then from Tony Robbins, he's talking, because if anybody's listened to Tony Robbins, he cusses a lot. He drops F-bombs like they are going out of style. And but he says, this is intentional. What I'm doing is I'm using taboo language, because when we use taboo language with others or within ourselves, we're telling ourselves, I'm in a familiar space. I'm not trying to be all correct and proper in front of people. I am in a familiar space with these people or with myself. And that's why the taboo language actually is an asset to whatever therapy he's trying to do, or, change he's trying to make.
Such a great point,
Yeah.
and a great tool. Thank you for sharing this. So visualization, right? We talked a lot about it. Are there any other tools that you love to mention that are like super powerful and work for you?
I mentioned visualization, prayer, meditation, and also the exercises. I can't understress how important the exercise part is. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs miss that because they're so busy, especially new entrepreneurs. They're so busy that they don't take that time for exercise. Another quote from Richard Branson, somebody asked him one day, "What's the success to your billions?" And he's kind of smiled and he said, "Working out." Exercise basically. And there's some seriousness to it. But another thing that I do is I don't try and reinvent the wheel. I don't try and do things alone. I was working as vice president of international business development for a company in 2016. And then I decided to create my own company. And I'd created other companies before and sold them. So I created my company, and part of my company was an educational company, and part of it was going to be speaking. And so the first thing I did is I called a buddy named David Brownlee, and he's about 2 years ahead of me kind of in the speaking game. And he's in San Diego, I'm in LA, so about a 2-hour drive. So I said, "Hey, David, I want to come to San Diego. Let's have lunch." So we had lunch. We sat down, and I didn't pretend that we were going to talk about friendship stuff for too long. Right away, I said, "Okay, David, here's what I'm thinking about doing." Told him my idea. This is before I created the company. Told him about my idea for the company, told him about my goals. And he immediately said, "This is right. You should do it." He gave me some advice. Then I created the LLC. Once that was set up, I said, "Hey, David, okay, here's where I am. Can we meet again?" So I went down and I spent another bit of time with him. That just mostly as a friend sounding board. So then I realized, okay, there's a critical point that I need to get some active things done. Called him up and said, "Hey, David, I want actually to work with you for half a day." So I went, paid him $500. He's a buddy of mine. I've known him for 22 years now. But I paid him $500 to go down, spend a half a day in San Diego with him and help him work with me on a few next steps for my business. And then to this day, David is somebody that if I have a question, I don't pay him every single time, don't need to, we're buddies. But when there's value that I need that he has. But the good thing is I have some things that he doesn't have. He has some things I don't have. So we kind of work with each other a little bit. And it's just been great to help be accountable and get wisdom from David, as he's, like I said, a few years ahead of me in this game. And he always has the next good step for me. And I think everybody should be a coach and have a coach as well. So it's been great.
Yeah, not doing everything by ourselves, right? And coach each other, do, I don't know, mentorship kind of things, and then and then just learn and ask for advice. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to get this idea. I kind of struggled with this at some point, that you should know all the answer or you should figure it all out by yourself. I mean, you could, but you'll probably spend much more time and energy on that, where you could be investing your time and energy in much more effective way, right? So ask for advice, ask for help, just get any shortcuts, quote unquote, every shortcut that you can get, and just move forward, because that's the goal, right? Yeah,
I totally agree. It's so easy. And I've done that before. Like I said, I've created 3 companies, and the first 2 particularly, I totally was a one-person show trying to do everything myself, figuring everything out. And then this last time, I'm like, you know what? I know people who are smarter than me in these areas. And I just asked them, and they were so willing to just give me all the advice that they could. And so there are a ton of people who are, for any listener right now, there's somebody who's a few steps ahead in whatever you're trying to do, and they'd probably be excited to just share with you. And joining masterminds, paid masterminds, or hiring a coach is a really, really, really quick way to accelerate what you're doing. I spend more money investing in myself than I'm trying to think, maybe any other aspect of my business. So and it's paid dividends. It's always been worth it.
Yeah, it always does. I heard it from someone that, before you start thinking about all kinds of complex investments, first invest in yourself, right?
Absolutely.
That's gonna for sure give you a return on investment in any economy or any situation before thinking of all the other things.
Yeah.
Uh, totally agree with you on that. And there was something else I wanted to mention about mentorship, or maybe I'll get back to that. But maybe you could share with us some tools from your health, nutrition, wellness toolkit. Because I believe a lot of entrepreneurs, especially at the beginning, or especially younger ones who kind of, have everything, no pains, and think they're
Yep.
invincible. So I believe it's like one of the foundational things we got to take care of ourselves, and to go longer in our business and in our life and enjoy the journey so much more. So what are your tools, your maybe non-negotiables, like
Yep.
nutrition, fitness, health, in those areas, wellness?
So, one, I have a bare minimum of exercise per day. Right now, I'm on an off season for training, like I mentioned. So my bare minimum is walking 1 mile a day. I haven't missed that for 85 days. And the only reason I missed it, I think I was in India and I was hired by somebody else. So I was on their schedule. So, but even when I travel, when I go to one of mine was jogging 1 mile a day. And my son and we didn't miss that for over 1 full year. And then we switched it up that we could either jog or bicycle, 3 miles bike or 1 mile jog. 2 years straight, we didn't miss a single day. Christmas, New Year, nothing, no holidays for this. We would go on vacation to Death Valley, 111 degrees. Not Death Valley, it was Palm Springs. 111 degrees. We're out there jogging our mile in 111 degrees. I broke my toe. I jogged for 3 weeks with a broken toe. I couldn't wear a shoe. We have a park across the street from my house and it's got grass. And so I jogged in the grass with no shoe on for 3 weeks because I had a broken toe. It was non-negotiable. But I do more than that. So I think exercise is one, but also I take nutrition very, very, and I go up and down. We had a massive remodeling project in our house, so we didn't have a kitchen for almost the whole year. And so I kind of got out of that a little bit. But I just literally the day before yesterday went out and found all the vitamins and, between K2, between B3 and, these different vitamins that we generally don't. Vitamin D, I think, is missing in almost everybody. And so I try and find out, and I know what my D3 levels are and vitamin D levels are and things like that. So, and I'm kind of joking, and I'm with my sons and I find these vitamins that were stashed in a box in the garage. And I say, okay, guys, we're going to be healthy now. And then so I doled out like 6 different, supplements for myself and my son when I first got all the things. So we take them, and about 2 hours later, my son walks into the room. I'm like, are you feeling great? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so I celebrate that, it's probably a minor benefit to me, but we celebrate this as being just life-changing. And if we do that, it really is. So, so I definitely take nutrition and exercise really well. And part of that, as we already talked about, the meditation is a key ingredient in that as well. But I think that celebration of the minor wins is a really, really big deal. And so we should do that. And keeping ourselves laughter, I think, I don't know, you've probably seen The Secret or read the book.
Yes.
And yeah. And so that one, that whole idea that laughter is the number one thing that we can do to be healthy. I totally agree with that. Somebody also I'm coaching, his mom has some struggles right now. And I said, without even telling her, I said, he's home with her for Christmas. I said, without even telling her, just start watching some funny movies. There are tons of funny Christmas movies. Just get some of those and get her laughing without even telling her that you're trying to help her health in this situation. And so it's a really positive thing.
And for listeners also, laughter is not just, it's not even this like metaphorical thing or metaphysical thing. It actually makes the body produce certain hormones and changes biochemistry. And that's why it works, right? It increases your inflammation and just, again, produces so many things. And that's why it's so transformational for our health. So yeah,
absolutely.
Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's it. That was it. It's just that. So those are the things: is the nutrition, the exercise, and the keeping our mind space in good. Mm-hmm. And again, for that too, it's nice to have accountability. That 2-year streak that I was on with my son, that would have been a lot harder to keep up if it wasn't both of us kind of keeping each other motivated. Same thing with my business. There's people I meet almost weekly, and all we do is spend a few minutes with a checkup with how we're doing. And it helps us to kind of stay focused.
Yeah, it's accountability, especially with peers, right? With people we relate to, people we care about. I think it's one of the best tools for self-development and business development. When you have even one person who really connect on this goal, on achieving this goal, it's like everything that you need, right?
Yeah.
You'll figure out the rest.
And having a community. So my first book, like you mentioned, was Ordinary to Extraordinary.
Yeah.
This book I published just for fun. It's some adventures from my life. But it's also, I spent a whole year rewriting it. So it's reader centric rather than me centric. That was based on some advice from somebody. So that book did really well. It led to some public speaking, so much that I quit my job to speak full time. But that was January 2020. And then in March 2020, boom, everything disappeared. And I didn't, Angela, have a cent lined up. My wife wasn't working. I didn't have 1 cent lined up for 2020. And I kind of freaked out. And then I thought, what am I going to do? My second book was sitting on a shelf for 2 years, 99% done, Explore. I finished this up real quickly. It did well. So I thought, okay, books are going to work, but it's going to take 2 years for me to write another good book. So then I had this idea. I had the exact book in my head. And I thought, I know some people who know more about mindset than I do. So where I'm going with this, so then I got 33 authors to help me do The Successful Mind. Angela, this magic happened because it wasn't just me now writing a book. Both of my books solo did good. This book did about 33 times better than my book did, because we had all of the support of all of these great authors from around the world. We have like an India, a firewall, a medical doctor from the States, a yoga instructor, a pastoral counselor from South Africa. We had all these great individuals. We even had a psilocybin expert who does trips at a resort in Costa Rica with mushrooms with people. And so we had all these perspectives about what creates a successful mind. And the book just went gangbusters. And it wasn't because I had this great idea and I put it into a book. It's because I had this community of people with a great idea, and it went gangbusters. So that this book, along with the Successful Body and the Successful Spirit, were just picked up by the largest publisher in the Middle East for the Arabic language translation. So they're going to distribute for 5 years those 3 books. And it's because there's so much power in the community when we work with other people.
And it just has something to do, that's what I'm focusing also on right now. Whenever I get to meet a person who is in the similar field, or we connect on something really well, like, okay, let's have a chat. Let's figure out how we can work together. Right? It's just the energy, the accountability, what you can bring to the table, the audiences that you connect, right? It's all this synergy, and it's just accelerate the journey, the success, the results. I think, at the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey, we all have this thing like, I'm going to do it by myself, I'm going to figure it all out. And you're like, and I don't want anyone to steal my ideas. But that's such a silly idea. I mean, our ideas are free. They're out there. It's the implementation that matters. It's, number one. And second, the more people you share it with, the more people you collaborate with, the more people you can impact with that idea, right? And that's where the power is, not just by having your idea.
No, absolutely. And I used to be caught up in that a little bit, that, I have my piece of the pie and I can't let other people into that. And now I realize that for anything good, it's a growing pie. I mean, we can all win. And it's not like if somebody else does something similar to me, and that I'm going to lose. It's not a zero-sum game at all. And so I used to kind of keep things kind of close. Not anymore. I'm just pretty wide open with my ideas, because like that other guy said, I'm doing good things. And if other people do that, it's also making the world a better place. It's even better. Yeah,
exactly. And plus, I always think nobody Yeah, we can have similar ideas, but nobody can steal your experience.
Uh-huh.
Nobody can steal everything that is in your head, right? It's just impossible. So
Yep.
again, just don't worry about anyone stealing your ideas, but instead focus on this synergy, collaboration, and spreading idea to as many people as possible.
Yeah. And if somebody does the same thing I do, say somebody learns something from me and does it better than me, either good on them for working super hard and doing it better than me, or shame on me for not working hard enough, and but but either way, we can all win. We don't have to, compare. It's not they win or I win.
Exactly. And you always can then, if somebody, takes something from you and makes it into something better, you can learn from them and then make something even better.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree that it's Gestalt, where the sum of the parts is bigger than the details, the individual parts. And there was a friend of mine named Kirk Rao in high school. And, if I could go this high with an idea and Kirk could go this high, together we would be off the charts, because I would say something, then he would say something back and bump me up. Then I would say something. And together it was so crazy how we would be able to take concepts so far, way further than either of us alone could do.
Yeah, that's the power of, collaboration and thinking together and doing together. So Erik, thank you so much for this interview, or for this podcast. I'm going to be mindful of your time and other commitments, right? We're almost going for an hour. Is there anything else that you'd like to add at the end of this episode for our listeners to maybe take action or be inspired by anything at all?
No, I'm super happy. Angela, thank you for inviting me on. This has been great conversations. You've got such wonderful ideas, so many great things going on. And if anybody does want, I've got something called the Extraordinary Habits Challenge. Mm-hmm. And it's basically the first 10 days. It's a 21-day challenge. The first 10 days, you add one positive habit. Some of these are super simple, like drinking more water or breathing more deeply. And some of them are a little more. And then the next is things that we can add to our lives to make it better, intentionally creating relationships, for example. So if anybody wants that 21-day habits challenge, it's on my website, free downloadable PDF. I love when people reach out to me. So if any listeners have connected with anything I've said, erikseverson.com, and I'm sure you're going to have show notes or something with the spelling of that. And I love getting feedback from people who have heard me speak. So happy to hear from any of you.
Yes, I mean, the challenge sounds fantastic, especially, New Year is coming, and our podcast, I believe, is going to be released right before New Year. So, or first week. So, I recommend people to take the challenge, because we are so much more likely to stick with anything when we started, like at the beginning of the year or on the first of the months. And also check out, I highly recommend to check out Erik's works, just to get inspired and to get, to going with all of your ideas and understand there are so many things you can be doing and accomplishing and achieving, no matter the
And just quickly, entrepreneurs, having a published book, is a great way. Like I said, my first book I wrote for fun. It led to some great public speaking things. Mm-hmm. If anybody's interested in writing a book in 2022, email me. I'd be happy to have a quick free chat about it, just because it's easier. It's this big mystery out there of how to get it done. And so I'm happy to share some of the things I know with that.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to actually take you on this offer. But I think it's not just it's a mystery. It's just also, that accountability, that guidance, that mentorship that we often need to actually complete the project and make the impact with it, right? So, yeah, definitely also recommend our listeners to do that if they want to write the book. And I think the last small piece is, are there any social media where you're more active so people could interact easier?
Yeah, LinkedIn is by far the most active for me. LinkedIn is all business for me, and I love it. I'm friends with most of these people I do business with. And then I'm on Facebook too. Facebook is all about fun and things like that. And there's a tiny crossover with business, but for the most part, that's my fun social media is Facebook, and my business one is LinkedIn. So if anybody's not active on LinkedIn, begin, because it's a great place to be as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to link all of this in the show notes and challenge and the social media. And yes, So yeah, thank you again, Erik, for joining me for today's podcast. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners also did. So listeners, also please do reach out to Erik with any feedback or any ask for advice, etc. And yeah, thank you, Erik, for coming to
Thank,
the show. It's a
thank
pleasure.
you, Angela.